bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. Ready? This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go.
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go. Go.
And a good Thursday morning, Birds fans. Appreciate you streaming on in here on Birds 365. You got Mac and Mac, McMullen and McDonald hanging with you for the next couple hours. Want to thank our buddy New Jersey Fishing Maniac on the stream for jumping in and reminding everybody, hit that like button. That's always a good way to start the show. Go ahead, give us some love. Hit the like button as you stream in here early. All right, see, making the request now, probably not a smart thing because we only got about 40 people checking in, and we hope to have upwards of 400 later on. So we might repeat that request a little bit later, but thanks to New Jersey Fishing Maniac for thinking of us.
Yeah, a little negative this week. A little people are a little down. 8-0 to 8-1. I'm a little surprised.
No, you're not.
Everyone is. No, I am a little surprised. I'm surprised how quickly people have gone from. Not everybody, obviously, but there's a lot of people that have gone from, I can't see a loss on the impending schedule to I can't see a win on it. I don't know how you do that so quickly. That's some whiplash right there.
Little bit. And in defense of those individuals, and I am not one of them, but I'll try and defend them here, play devil's advocate for a second. Not just the loss, but the loss of Dallas Goedert added to that.
Yeah, the injuries to me are a far bigger deal than the actual loss.
Right. And you can certainly say people are acknowledging and feeling the pinch of those injuries. And it's legit. Because when we left the air yesterday, Johnny Mac, 22 hours ago, we did not know if Dallas Goedert was even going to go on the injured reserve list. Maybe it was only going to be a couple of weeks. Oh, no. 4 at a minimum, and it could be longer than that. We won't know until we get a little further down the road, because we know the Eagles are like the Secret Service in keeping injury information to themselves, getting that competitive advantage. And Nick Sirianni talked about it at length yesterday. We don't know when Dallas Goedert's coming back.
Yeah. You're right about the Eagles. Now, behind the scenes, I've heard AC joint injury, and that typically can be a 2 to 4 week injury on the lesser part of the scale. If it's not as serious, 4 to 6 weeks if it's more serious. So it would indicate, obviously, by he's going to miss 4 games, it would indicate the more serious part of it. So if you figure 6 weeks as the ceiling, still not the worst thing in the world, not good by any stretch of the imagination, but you got to persevere. We talked about it a lot. This is a player you can't replace, and Nick Sirianni talked about it after the show. I mean, you don't just insert somebody and say, do what Dallas Goedert does. So, it's got to be a combination of Jack Stoll and Grant Calcaterra, maybe Tyree Jackson, maybe Noah Tungiai at some point. But, yeah, I mean, more than that, it's got to be a change to more Quez Watkins and more Zach Pascal, I think, than, the tight end screens. You can pretty much wipe them out. Maybe you can throw one to Calcaterra every once in a while, try to surprise somebody. But it's not going to be a staple any longer. of your offensive play calling. Certainly shouldn't be. And we'll see how they handle it. They've been very good offensively, adjusting over the past 2 seasons since Nick has gotten here. But this is a big one, no doubt about it. That is a big injury. And back when they were 8-0, I remember saying that week, injuries are the one thing that can they can destroy anybody's season, and that's a big one.
Acknowledged, as per Nick Sirianni yesterday, and I believe him, and I think he's telling you the 100% truth, that there is no one individual that's going to replace Dallas Goedert. It takes a village to replace Dallas Goedert. We all understand that and agree on that. But if there's one guy who's going to be asked to do the most with help, because it's not going to be one guy, but if you were to stack them in order of those who are going to be tasked to do Dallas Goedert-like things, who do you think that number one guy is?
Jack Stoll.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, Jack's the backup tight end. Jack is, he's going to play the most. Nick mentioned that Jalen trusts him. He's a smart player. He's in the right spots. That's, a lot of what you want from backup players is just don't make egregious mistakes and, just do the things you're supposed to do. And Jack Stoll played a lot to begin with. He plays a lot. So we don't know much about Grant Calcaterra at this stage. They like his ceiling as a pass catcher. He's not a very good blocker. We understand that. Hasn't played much. Tyree Jackson, we haven't seen in a calendar year. And I think people forget he was a quarterback making the transition to tight end. It's not like he's been playing tight end for his entire life. So, he's another outlier. He's got tremendous athleticism, and you hope he can develop, but you can't just say, oh, Tyree's back from a calendar year of not practicing. He's going to be a difference maker. I mean, that's pie in the sky, as they say, Jody. So Jack Stoll is going to be the guy. He's going to be the guy in 11 personnel that's the tight end. And they're probably going to play less 12 and 13 than they have because they lost a really good player. And their better players, their better backup players are receivers. So it stands to reason you go heavier with the receivers.
Here's the reason why I think it's going to be Jack Stoll above and beyond everything else. And you just gave us, 4 or 5 great reasons why. Here's the number one in my mind. I think the Eagles may actually revert a little bit to the 2021 Eagles, which you'll remember got off to a 2-5 start, and the coaching staff came together and said, listen, we got to get the season turned around, and what do we do best? We run behind our offensive line. And they became a running team, a run-dominant team. A big part of that last year and Eagles' success running the football this year is Dallas Goedert. Because this side of Kittle in San Francisco, he might be the best blocking tight end in football. He is a monster when it comes to adding to the offensive line in run blocking. He has had some plays this year where I watch every Eagle game and I record it and I take notes and write down times, circle big plays. Dallas Goedert blocks have been plays that I've circled several times during, and you just don't think of, tight end with a big block. Oh, Dallas Goedert does that. And Jack Stoll, at least as per ratings and what we all believe, not breaking down game film like the coaches do, he is far and away their best blocking tight end. So I think who's going to replace Dallas Goedert catching the football? Nobody. I don't know that they have that guy. Don't expect Tyree Jackson or Calcaterra or Jack Stoll to come in here and have a 75-yard game. I don't believe that's going to happen. So the thing they're probably worried about most losing Dallas Goedert is what he adds and brings to the running game. I think without Goedert, they may try and run it a little bit more than they have up to this point this year. And the guy who probably helped them do that the most is Jack Stoll.
Yeah, no, and he's, the most ready to play, the one who does play, the most experience. And I think that was notable that Nick said The quarterback trusts him because as a receiver, the receiving part of the game, the worst thing you can do is fool the quarterback. So if the quarterback trusts you, that's a big deal. And yeah, he's by far the best blocker they have at tight end. I mean, Grant Calcaterra is not known for his blocking, and Tyree Jackson wasn't even a tight end, so blocking isn't his forte. And Jack was brought in to be a blocking tight end. I think the biggest thing they'll miss about Dallas Goedert, the skill set's obvious. I mean, there's only maybe 5 people on the planet that can even be in the conversation with him. For skill set at tight end, but so that part's obvious. What he brings to the offense is an unpredictability, because normally when other offenses are in 11, they're going to throw the ball. That's what they want to do. But the Eagles, because of Dallas's blocking ability, they can run the ball, and they're more effective running from 11 than they are from 12 or 13, which is counterintuitive, but people think they're going to pass, and all of a sudden they run with the tight end, and they're surprised by it. Now, when you're 12 and 13, people are more alert for the run, and the Eagles can pass out of those formations because the tight end is so good as a receiver, and it creates this unpredictability. You saw it when their offense was humming. A lot of that is, we always say the defense is on the heels. The defense doesn't know what's coming. They don't know what's coming because they're looking at their keys. All right, they're going to run the football. They're going to run the football. Here they come. They throw the football, and vice versa. That's going to be missing without Dallas Goedert. And you could try some different things. You can trend bust, as I said, and they will, but it's not going to be the same because people aren't going to be threatened nearly as much by the other players.
So now you have to root and hope that it is only a 4-week injury. It's going to be a minimum of 4 weeks because they put him on IR. It may be more than that, and it could end up being a massive injury for the Eagles staff to deal with. All right, staying on the injury front. Did you watch Marlon Tuipulotu come off the field injured on Monday night against the Commanders?
No,
I didn't notice it on television. You were there at the game.
No. But I'll also note that, and I know where you're going, and I went there as well. I said, does this have more to do with trying to get Linval Joseph in here, which we'll talk about, and trying to sort of stash Marlon. But I will note, I didn't know Dallas Goedert was injured. He played through the injury. Marlon played through the injury. One thing about the NFL is that's changed from the days, and you and I have been around for far too long, Jody. So we remember all the way back to George Allen was famous for stashing players. They're not ready, but stash them on injured reserve, keep them around, keep them in your organization. You used to be able to do that. You can't do it as much now. Now, while I say that, there's some wiggle room because everybody's banged up in the NFL. So you guys play through injuries all the time. AJ Brown could go on IR tomorrow if he wasn't going to play through this ankle injury. You could put him in there and legitimize it and document it. But you also have to document the stuff. And when, you're trying to stash a bunch of guys on injured reserve, they will stop that. So he's hurt. How hurt? Could he play through it? That's the interesting part. Like, in other words, did their reaction, were they going to sign? And Nick Sirianni was asked this, and he said, no, we like Marlon, blah, blah, blah. Were they going to sign Linval Joseph if Marlon was healthy? That's the question. I hope to get the bottom of someday soon. I think they wanted to sign Linval no matter what. They claim that they like Marlon as a player, but and I do think I don't think there's 100% either side. I do think they like Marlon as a player, but he's not in the role he should be in. So that to me is the biggest issue. And this is one of the very few mistakes Howie Roseman had while building this roster is not having a backup for Jordan Davis. And by that, I mean, same thing with Dallas Goedert. I'm not talking about having somebody who can come in and be a star. I'm saying somebody who can play that role and is comfortable in that role, a true nose tackle. Now, I don't know. Linval Joseph was a great nose tackle. I mean, that's the player, actually, literally the player the Eagles want Jordan Davis to become. That's how good a nose tackle he was. But he's 34.
Right.
You know, Robert Quinn was a great pass rusher. Last year, he was a great pass rusher. Yeah, I see no evidence in Chicago or Philadelphia he's still a great pass rusher. So it can happen quickly in this league. And he's 34, and he hasn't played all season. Now, I think he hasn't played because he hasn't wanted to play, wanted to be with a contender. He thinks he has an opportunity to go steal a ring, as they say. I think he can still play. He's not what he once was, but he's the perfect fit if he's the old Linval Joseph for what this team wants.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't have my finger on the pulse of the general manager whispers and wires. Guys like getting paid. And if Linval Joseph had a legitimate offer to play for somebody, I don't think he turned one down because, I don't really think they're going to be able to win. So I'm going to pass on that and stay unemployed.
He's playing for the veteran minimum. So that's, at 34, like that's part of, in my opinion, and this is only my opinion. I haven't talked to the guy yet. He wasn't there yesterday. That's the way this league works, unfortunately, for veteran players. You go from these highly paid, and he's made a lot of money over his career to this, and they say to themselves, well, I'm not paying for that. And then you say, I'm not paying for that for some crap team who's going to say, yeah, I'll bring you in and pay you the veteran minimum. But maybe if he can go steal a ring, that's where I think he comes into play. But yeah, if he had a legitimate 3-year deal for a lot of money like he's used to making, he would have signed the contract with anybody. But that's not there for 34-year-olds in this league. That's just never going to be there. That's the way this industry works.
Yeah, sorry, John. I disagree with you. Veteran minimum, unemployed. Veteran minimum, unemployed. Yes, the veteran minimum doesn't jump off the page. Unemployed surely does, as in you're not getting paid anything. So if you realize that that's what you're going to have to play for any of the 32 teams, nobody's offering you. When the offer comes, it's going to be the veteran minimum. Yeah. Do you know of any other team that offered him any contract during this offseason?
No, but I haven't talked to him.
Right.
I guarantee you somebody offered Linval Joseph a contract because he played well enough last year. I mean, I guarantee you. I mean, I'll dig and I'll buy. I guarantee he had offers. I mean, this is, this guy played at a relatively high level last year, but he's old. People don't like paying old players in this league. I'm surprised you disagree with that. Now, if it's not the case, as I said, and Robert Quinn is a perfect example of this, he went from 18 and a half sacks to 129 of 130 on Pro Football. I mean, that is kind of hard to explain. The drop-off happens quickly in this league, and that's part of the reason why nobody's going to offer him a 2-year contract. But I feel very comfortable saying Linval Joseph got offers. Same with Ndamukong Suh. Since day one, now I know Ndamukong Suh has offers. He's not playing. I know Odell Beckham Jr. has offers. He's not playing.
Right.
I mean, there are people who make decisions for other reasons. They're not just going to come back to play, especially when they've made a ton of money over their careers.
How much do you believe Linval Joseph made over his career?
Oh.
I would suggest less than Deshaun Watson's going to make this year.
Well, he's a nose tackle, Jody, against the largest contract. He's made $40 million. I mean, how much? He signed 2 huge contracts. He signed 3 contracts that were significant. His first one coming off he was a 2nd-round pick, so you make decent money in New York. Then he signed a huge deal with Minnesota. Then he was a 2-time Pro Bowl selection. Then he got an extension, and then he got a good deal with Los Angeles when he left Minnesota. This guy's made a lot of money, Jody.
Okay.
Now, he doesn't make quarterback money, but he's made a lot of money in his career.
It's all right. It's in comparison one to the other. And yeah, some positions are much more highly paid than others. But when you say he's made a lot of money, well, no, Deshaun Watson's made a lot of money. He's made good defensive tackle money.
His first contract, 4 years, $50 million, which he played out in Minnesota. Then he signed for 5 years, $31 million. I think he saw 3 years of that. Then he had the 2-year deal for $17 million with the Chargers. I mean, if that's not a lot of money, I don't know what a lot of money is. That's as much money as a nose tackle is going to make.
Fletcher Cox has made a lot of money. Fletcher Cox has made more money playing
under tackle. Yes. That is the most money a nose tackle is going to make in this league. This is the problem with people with Jordan Davis. And they say, well, just play Milton Williams. They play different positions. Fletcher Cox plays a different position. Fletcher Cox plays Aaron Donald's position. Aaron Donald makes more than nose tackles. For a nose tackle, Linval Joseph has made as much money as anyone in the NFL over the past decade. Anyone.
Okay. But again, you just want to keep him in that nose tackle position, which is where he plays. But when you use a phrase like "it's made a lot of money," made a lot of money for a nose tackle, not made a lot of money as compared to other football players. And my position is that he's not making this decision based on the fact that the Eagles are 8-1. I think he's making this decision on the fact that the Eagles offered him a contract, whatever that contract is. You don't know. I don't know. Neither one of us know, but I stand on top of what's going on in the league pretty well. I've heard no one say they've had interested in signing Linval Joseph and had offered him a contract.
Well, I don't know what
at whatever level it is.
If $80 million isn't a lot of money for a nose tackle, I don't know what to say. But if you're telling me Linval Joseph or Ndamukong Suh is going to play for the Houston Texans because they get a 1-year veteran minimum deal, I don't agree with you. He's coming back to play with a contender. And if he didn't get an offer from a contender, he probably wouldn't be playing. And I'm not saying he can play because I don't know. He's 34 years old. But he's not taking a deal from the stinking Houston Texans. I guarantee you that. I mean, there are other reasons people decide to walk away from the game. We've seen people walk away at the apex of their careers. Everybody's different, Jody. Everybody's different.
And the Houston Texans, yes, unless he's a Texas guy and he wants to just go home and it's convenient for him. There are a handful of teams that are probably going to be eliminated that he'd say, yes, not playing is better than the veteran minimum for that team. I bet you there's 20 teams he would play for that you would consider, to use your word, contenders if they had offered him a contract. More than half of the league.
Well, hopefully we'll get to talk to him today. Hopefully he'll give us some information. But yeah, you and I are just going to disagree because this guy has made a shitload of money in his NFL career. So, I mean, that's just agree to disagree there.
Yeah. And I'm not disagreeing that he's made very good money for a defensive tackle. But I disagree with your stance that he's coming to the Eagles because they're the Eagles, because they're 8-1. I'm saying he would have signed previously had a team, a non-basement team, a non-contender team, a team that's in the middle of the pack of the NFL. If they had offered him a contract, I think he would have signed earlier. This is pretty late, John, 9 weeks into the season to not be on a roster.
Yeah, and I firmly believe he wouldn't be playing if they weren't a good team. He wouldn't have come back. And he talked to Josina Anderson, by the way, Josina, and that's the first thing he said. Chance to win a Super Bowl.
which is an obvious answer when you join the team. Once you put pen to paper, it's pretty obvious to say, yeah, I'm coming here because we've got a chance to win the Super Bowl. I think 30 out of 30 guys in this position would say the same exact thing. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We got our buddy Special Ed Kracz. He's up next. Sports Illustrated Maven joins us here on Birds 365.
Don't wait until after Thanksgiving for leftovers. It's the new leftover sales event at Jeff D'Ambrosio Destination Downingtown. Jeff must get rid of hundreds of new 2022 vehicles on the lot. Rams, Grand Cherokees, Wranglers. Jeff has them all for less. Jeff has reduced prices and payments to the lowest they've been all year. And Jeff knocks down high interest rates. Save thousands, more than anywhere else. Plus, get more for any trade or lease return. You always win at Jeff's. Great selection, best price. Hurry in now. Jeff D'Ambrosio Destination Downingtown. Nobody treats you better. Black Friday sales event.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Go for the beers, go for the cheers, go for the hit and the hits, go for the scene, go for the screens, go for the gallery, go for the win, go to Ocean.
At Salus University, our graduates are among the most highly trained in their profession because of our unique emphasis on research, interprofessional collaboration, and early clinical exposure. Learn more about our programs at salus.edu.
Mag guys here with you on Birds 365. We're closing in on the Eagles' return to the field after their Monday night loss to the Washington Commanders. I think John and I are both less worried about the fact that they lost the game, that they lost Dallas Goedert, and they also have some other injuries that they have to deal with. What is the state of the Eagles? We bring in Ed Kracz because he knows better than anybody on the planet. Ed Kracz, right now, what is the state of the Philadelphia Eagles?
8-1.
That's all I can tell you. Stick to the numbers, Schwartz does. Yeah. What's 8-1? We're playing 8-1 football, Jim Schwartz would say.
8-1. I mean, come on. Listen,
that's
middle of November until their first loss. The biggest concern for me is it happened in the NFC East. This division's very good this year, and to me, it looks like they might not do any better than 3-3. They have 2 left with the Giants. They'll probably split. They have 1 left with the Cowboys. They'll probably lose. It's 3-3. Is that going to be good enough to win? I think it will, because I think you take care of business outside the NFC East. And
is it good enough to get you the first seed? Because that's the goal.
I don't know. The Vikings are right there now with 1 loss. They're, the Eagles really are a game ahead because they have that tiebreaker on the head.
By the way, and maybe both of you guys, because you get the SI odds. Jody, you're a gambling guy. Why the hell is Dallas favored over Minnesota, and the game's in Minnesota?
Well, that's a good question. Maybe because they think, hey, Minnesota had this, huge win in Buffalo
Yeah, that
last
might
week.
play
Maybe
into
they'll
it.
be a
That
little
might
flat.
play into it.
That's legit.
That
Cowboys
might
are
play
Sound
coming
like
off
a
the
seasoned gambler there, Ed Kracz. I didn't think that was the case.
Yeah, by the way, I don't necessarily disagree because I haven't believed in Minnesota or the Giants all season, but I was just surprised to see that line.
How many
And
points is it? What is the line? I know
I
they're
think
favored.
Dallas is favored by 1, so it's not
Yeah.
significant, but
Mhm.
it's a road game and the home team's 8-1, and that's typically a difficult place to play. It just stood out to me, but it's Birds 365, so we got to talk about the Eagles. Now, the Eagles are on the road. I told Jody, and I'm surprised. I want to run this by you, Ed. I'm surprised how quickly not everybody, but a portion of the fan base has gone from I don't see a loss on the schedule to the pearl clutching of I don't see a win on the schedule. Jonathan Taylor, how are they going to stop Jonathan Taylor and Aaron Jones and Saquon Barkley and blah, blah, blah. 8-1. I mean, and by the way, Nick Sirianni isn't letting Jim Irsay off the hook this week. I'm very confident in the Eagles this week. Where are you?
Yeah, I'm probably down the middle here. I was concerned about this game against Washington. I thought it could be a loss.
Yeah, you were all week, but you didn't show the courage of your convictions. Ed all week was saying the Eagles are going to lose this game, and then at the end, I think he went Eagles by a field goal. You pegged it.
I did. My bad there. But that's why I don't gamble. Anyway, yeah, there's legitimate concerns with the running backs you mentioned. But this is Philadelphia, right? It's the city of overreaction, more or less. You don't see a loss on the schedule when they're sitting there at 6-0, 7-0, 8-0, and now they lose a game. And it's like, oh my gosh, the sky's falling. I don't see a win here. It's probably that way in a lot of cities, but there's wins left on this schedule. I mean, the Eagles are a good team, and there's been a lot of talk about refocusing and regathering this week after that loss, and I could certainly see it. I think the Eagles just overlooked the Commanders. I think they just they weren't ready. They hadn't played in a long time, so their mental edge probably wasn't what it needed to be. I think it's good that they're on a short week. They only have 6 days instead of the normal 7 or whatever it is to get ready for this game or to play this game. So I like that fact, and I think that loss could be galvanizing. Now, we've seen teams go 8-0 before, and I think all of them. I think it's happened 10 times, and I think all of them made the playoffs. But some teams have really hit the skids, like Andy Reid's Kansas City.
Arizona last year.
Last year. Andy Reid went 2-5 over the last 7 games after hitting 9-0. So it could happen that they don't play as well, but I don't think that'll be the case. I think there are definitely wins left on this schedule, and they'll get the job done.
All right, Ed. Nick Sirianni said yesterday that Linval Joseph gave them a hard time last year playing for the Chargers in a game that LA was in here and beat the Eagles. Yet they didn't sign him till Marlon Tuipulotu went on injured reserve. So that tells me they think Linval Joseph is better than Big Marvin Wilson. What can Eagle fans expect from Linval Joseph stepping in here for the next couple of weeks? Because the coach was selling it pretty good yesterday. Joseph's going to be able to come in and play, even though he hasn't been on a field in 10 months.
I listen. I get the sense that Linval Joseph wouldn't be here if Marlon Tuipulotu didn't get hurt. But once he went down, they placed a call to Linval Joseph instead of Ndamukong Suh, and said, "Why don't you come in and play nose tackle for us?" And we don't know what kind of shape he's in or condition he's in. Someone sent me an Instagram that he put out there that showed him working out and being ready and talking about his 2 daughters. And, he still wants to play and he's waiting for the right opportunity. And he looked in good shape. It showed him working out.
He's big. I can confirm he's big.
Yeah. What did he weigh? Like 350 pounds or something when he played? I'm sure he hasn't lost any weight. So if anything, he's probably gained a few pounds, but there's teams are still going to have to block him. It's not like, we can just ignore Linval Joseph in the middle. you're still going to have to send a blocker at him, maybe two. So I think he'll help this team. It's going to be interesting to see how many plays he has against Jonathan Taylor and the Colts on Sunday. But, yeah, I think can still play. But Robert Quinn really hasn't showed any ability to continue playing. But I think Linval Joseph might be a little different, and I think he'll help the team. This team on the run defense certainly could use some help in the middle. Javon Hargrave's having a terrific season, a half sack away from his career high. He has 7, but he's not a run stopper, really. He's a very good pass rusher. And then Fletcher Cox, I mean, he hasn't played, overwhelmingly well at all. He played all those snaps on Monday night, 70 snaps.
And he feels like crap, by the way.
Yeah, he said he didn't feel real good body-wise. So, but what else were they going to do? I mean, it was a bad rotation. You didn't go into the game thinking you were going to have to take 83 reps on defense.
No.
But, you mentioned Marvin Wilson. I think he would have at least given them – you knew that Washington was going to run the ball. Why wouldn't you play Marvin Wilson? He's not a typical nose center. He can play any spot along that D line, but at least he was able to provide some reps. And maybe in his second straight start or game, he would have played better than he did in Houston.
Yeah, I was a little surprised they didn't elevate Marvin.
I was very surprised. Game. Absolutely. But
Linval, I think they should have.
Yeah, they should have. Absolutely. But Linval's better, and he'll be a better option in the middle for the defense.
Yeah. Now, you bring up a good point. And, I was thinking about this yesterday, the 83 reps. I mean, that was part of the issue. Now, there's no, the defense isn't going to get indicted for getting off the field. It's certainly partially their problem that they can get off the field. But I think the dislike of Jonathan Gannon and the way he plays defense for a lot of the fan base, again, not everybody, but a lot of the fan base, has sort of masked what a poor performance the offense had in the fact that they were off the field so quickly, whether it was turnovers, 3 and outs. If I told you before that game, Ed, the Washington would run the football 45 times, whatever it was. I think it was more than that.
49 times.
49 times. They'd average 3.1 yards per carry. Their longest run would be 11 yards. Would you think we'd be talking about how bad the run defense was?
Well, that's a number that you could throw out there, but really it helped set up the play action stuff too, that Washington was able to keep the Eagles off balance. And, they had some wide open receivers because they tried to stop the run at some point, and the play action was more effective because they were able to run the football. And yeah, if you told me they were running the ball 49 times and they averaged 3.1 yards a game, I'd say the Eagles are in trouble because that's a time of possession thing when you're able to run the ball.
All the time. Yeah,
times.
But that's kind of my point. Doesn't that also factor with the offense? Was it kind of getting a pass?
Absolutely. I mean, listen, the Eagles had 6 minutes of time of possession in the first half, and so I know the numbers are skewed, but, they ran the ball. They got that turnover at the 18-yard line on Josh Sweat's fumble, and they ran it. Jalen Hurts runs for 12 on a designed run. Yeah. Boston Scott picks up 5, and then Hurts sneaks it in, and then it becomes a passing show. They needed to run the ball more in the first half to keep Washington's offense off the field, and they just kept throwing it. And it was just a bad game plan from Sirianni. Like we talk about the players maybe not being sharp after that layoff. I don't think the coaches were any good either. And now they're going to have to make up for it. But I just think that, it was a poor game plan going in. They didn't do well. I thought they got out coached. And that's what happens. They end up losing.
Now, the reason why I'm less perturbed about the offensive coaching than the defensive coaching is the 2 biggest plays were fumbles. And none of them got coached to fumble. When Goddard gives the ball up, turns it over, that's not on a coaching decision. When Quez Watkins tries to make a big play, gets up after being down and fumbles the football, that's not on a coaching decision. So that's why I'm a little bit more critical of the defensive coaching game plan this week than the offensive. To that end, Ed, and I did the math last night, the tight end reps for the Commanders were 123. If you had all 3 tight ends, Thomas, Bates, and Rodgers in, they were on the field for 123 snaps, and the Commanders had 83 offensive snaps. That means 40 snaps, they had 2 tight ends on the field, 40 plays during the game. Are you telling me during those 40 plays that Josiah Scott is better suited to potentially stopping the run than putting in Nakobe Dean on the field as an extra linebacker? And yes, I know they can pass just because they have two tight ends doesn't guarantee they're going to run. Oh, the Commanders ran it a lot. Now, 2020 hindsight, we know what the play calls were. They ran a lot when they were in two tight end. Why wouldn't you put an extra linebacker on the field if the other team's got two tight ends out there?
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you that at all. I think they should have put Nakobe Dean in, and I think they should put Nakobe Dean in on Sunday in Indianapolis because that's a good way to stop the run. I know John wrote about this and made a good case for, the defensive philosophy to remain the same, but that doesn't mean, like you said, when they have 12 personnel out there, two tight ends, more often than not, you're probably going to run. But even if they pass, Nakobe Dean can cover. At least he could do it at Georgia. Kaiser White can cover. He showed that ability already this season and in with the Chargers last year. So it's not like if they throw a curveball and throw out of 12 personnel, it's like, oh my gosh, the Eagles are going to get beat here because they don't have guys that can cover. But yeah, I think it's time for Nakobe Dean to have some kind of role here. You just can't keep running the same scheme and expect different results, right? Isn't that what Joe Banner said about the definition of sanity, to expect things to change by doing it over and over again or something like that? So there's got to be something different that they do here. And Nakobe Dean is a linebacker with a pedigree. Why not get him involved somehow? Why not carve out a role? And I'm not saying, 40, 50 snaps. I mean, play him for 15 to 20 snaps. Try to play that game of chess to match up with the other team, whatever they decide to do with their tight ends. And even without their tight ends, you could still use Nakobe Dean on the field. And do you like him better than Josiah Scott? I would say probably, yeah, I do. If Maddox was still healthy, then maybe not so much. But, yeah, I would take Nakobe Dean over Josiah Scott, and I would try something different and go with three linebackers to try to stop the run a little bit better.
Yeah, to me, it comes down to, look, the Eagles play defense the way they play defense, and most Philadelphia fans don't like the style they play defense. I think it's got more to do with the back end than the front, because their whole defense is built on, quarters coverage or cover 2, cover 6, depending on what they're going to play. And all of a sudden, if you mix with that, if you mix with one part of it, you're messing with the back part of it. And that's why Linval's here, because they didn't have the big nose tackle to take up 2 blocks, and all of a sudden it starts showing up. And I think that's, one of the big mistakes, one of the few mistakes that Howie Roseman made in building this roster, not having a backup, a true backup to Jordan Davis at nose tackle. And that's why they went so quickly and tried to solve that issue. We'll see if they did solve the issue. With Nakobe Dean, I think it complicates things because he was so good in college and he was so good at Georgia, and people remember, and he had such a big reputation. And like, how do you not get Nakobe Dean on the field? If he's getting on the field, he's getting on the field for Kaiser White. So that to me is the question. Do you want him on the field instead of Kaiser White? And I think, by the way, maybe the most overrated player by the fan base through 8 games was Kaiser White. So I think that's the better case, to be honest.
Okay.
They're not taking the nickel off
honestly,
the field.
Ed and I think that the defensive coordinator should have more than just this narrow focus ability to do it, because they got beat this week by the Commanders with Taylor Heineke and James Robinson. They're facing better quarterbacks and better running backs coming up in these next few weeks. And if Jonathan Gannon's attitude is, hey, our defense is our defense and I ain't changing, Eagles could be screwed.
Well, then let me frame it this way. Larger picture, who's overreacting, who's underreacting? 8-1, number 3 defense in the NFL. Why are you changing from that?
I just think because of that, what Washington was able to do on the ground, what Houston was able to do on the ground, even though they didn't win. The Eagles they run defense has been leaky for the last month now, and they've been able to overcome it because they had these historic second quarters where they outscored teams at a ridiculous rate. So they had leads, and they were okay with letting a team try to come back on the ground as long as they didn't get beat over the head. Let them chew up some clock on the ground instead of hitting a big play over the top and kind of shorten that comeback. So they were okay with that. But against Washington, they didn't score a single point in the second quarter. They trailed at halftime for the first time this year by 6 points. It was completely different than what they saw. So Washington stuck with the run. And I think you just can't shrug that off and say, well, okay, that was an anomaly. You have to look at it very harshly and say, what can we do differently? And like Jody said, I mean, if it means a role for Dean, and I'm not saying take Kaiser White off the field. Dean's been cross-trained, and Kaiser White's been in this league. I mean, you can put 3 linebackers on the field. There's no rule that says you can't use 3 linebackers. And then if you have a slot receiver, maybe you bring you play a 1 safety deep with Epps back there, and you bring Chauncey Gardner-Johnson into the slot or a little closer to the line to pay attention to that slot receiver. I mean, there are things you can do to try to stop another team from running against you. Yeah, you're 8-1, but if you can't figure out what teams are doing and they're going to run at you, and if 8-1 becomes 8-2 or 8-3, then you have a problem. And why wait until that point? Why not try to kind of be proactive and figure out how to do it and try something a little different schematically?
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways. And you mentioned I was surprised that Marcus Epps was moved into the slot in Houston when Avonte got hurt. There are questions. You can have questions every week about how things have blamed out, but that's why I look at that game in Washington. I think the bigger concern was the back end than the run defense. Now, I'm not saying the run defense was great. I called it the Leroy Horde game. They're giving up just enough each play to make it difficult on the back end. But the bottom line is you got to get off the field on third down, and they had communication issues. Darius Slay probably had his worst game of the year. Isn't that self-correcting? Darius Slay is Darius Slay. I don't expect him to play like that every week. And if you get on the field, if you get off the field on third down, isn't 3.1, isn't the most explosive run of 11 yards? Isn't that acceptable?
Well, listen, I think when you look at the back end, they had to kind of freeze a little bit with the play action because Washington kept them off balance with that run game. And, once you freeze just that brief second, you're going to get an open receiver to hit, be able to hit in the passing game. So I think the running really exposed the back end's flaws there. And that was just kind of reading and trying to freeze for a second to see if they were going to run and come up and stop the run. And then they didn't. And then they were beaten a little bit. So I don't know. You were right about the miscommunication. I really think that inactivity, 2 games in 28 days really impacted them more than they'll admit. But yeah, I think again, you need to be proactive here, and you need to find a way to make sure that running game you get you get off the field. And if you stop the run and you're not able to play action as much, then you'll be able to get off the field. But they were in 3rd and 4. I think all their third downs were 3rd and less than 5. Maybe
they were not good on 3rd and short. They're never good on 3rd and short.
Well, you can't give up yards on 1st and 2nd down. Then the offense is dictating to the defense, and you're able to do things like play action and hit wide open receivers. I think that was more of the issue with the back end, was just they were off balance and they weren't communicating well.
And they're definitely missing Jordan Davis. There's no doubt about that. And one of the places that shows, Ed, is John mentioned, we talked about yesterday, Darius Slay throws in his biggest clunker of a game all year. He's a Pro Bowl level player. He was playing to a Pro Bowl level the first 8 weeks of the season. So you assume, all right, everybody have a bad game. He goes back to being a Pro Bowl level player. Fletcher Cox was a Pro Bowl player as well a couple of years ago. And there was a drop-off last year. And the drop-off was significant on Monday night against the Commanders. Are we seeing the demise of Fletcher Cox right before our very eyes?
Yeah, it's weird. Every time you write him off, he seems to come up with a big game. Remember we did it last year.
Right, I'm officially doing it, Fletch. So if Ed's right, that you when we write you off, you come up with a big game. I'm officially writing you off here, Fletcher.
Yeah. Listen, he's not the same player, obviously, that he was, you know, the first 9 years or 8 years of his career. There's no doubt. And, you know, we could be seeing the end of him in Philadelphia. Unless he wants to come back on a $5 or $6 million 1 year deal, but the Eagles aren't going to give him another $14 million to come back for a year. You
never know with Howie. Howie loves
it. I know, but I think part of the reason they brought him back at 14 was just, you know, Howie has these allegiances and loyalties to a player, and you know, Fletcher's been here his whole career, so it was an overpayment, no doubt, after what we've seen from him last year and the year before, but. You know, you got to hope that he has something left in the tank. It's not a good sign that he's going to play Sunday 6 days after playing 70 snaps. And yesterday saying that, you know, he feels awful. You know,
it's not a good sign.
Yeah. And that wasn't his word, you know, but his body, he said, didn't feel real good.
You can say the word here. We're on
shitty. He said he felt shitty. And I'm sorry, Mom, if you're watching. But, I think, you know, Jody, we've seen Fletch's kind of career crater here toward the last couple of years. But again, he's capable of putting together that one game just when you write him off that thinks, oh, you know, Fletch is back. And then kind of he goes back to what he was that we've seen. So maybe he's listening and, you know, he decides that this is going to be the game. But it's definitely a concern when he says his body feels terrible after 70 snaps. And now he's got to play again. So, you know, we'll see how he does in Indy.
All right, Ed Kracz, last one from me, si.com/NFL/Eagles. Read Ed Kracz there and me if you want to read me as well. Offense getting off the hook again. We're not talking about the offense at all. And to me, the biggest issue with the Philadelphia Eagles coming out of the Washington game was not about scheme on either side of the ball. It was about Dallas Goedert, and they lost Dallas Goedert for at least 4 games. Nick Sirianni was honest. Nobody's going to replace him. It's going to take a bunch of players. I think it's got more to do with Quez Watkins and Zach Pascal now, because they're your better options than the Jack Stolls, the Grant Calcaterras, the Tyree Jacksons of the world. How do you think the Eagles are going to handle the absence of Dallas Goedert?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, and Nick even said there'll probably be more targets for A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith now because, you know, he always said this offense runs through Goedert, Brown, and Smith. So you'll probably see an increase in targets. You know, where you might miss him a lot is in the run game. You know, Goedert has made himself into a very good blocker at the point of attack. And, you know, this Eagles run game's pretty good. And we'll see who can take up those snaps. I know Stoll is a good blocker, but now you're probably going to send him into coverage. I mean, what can Grant Calcaterra do? You know, blocking in the run game. I don't know. I don't think he's really done it a whole lot. They activated Tyree Jackson, who looks huge, by the way. Have you noticed that, John? I mean, he just
he's
all muscled up. He looks like a completely different guy than he did, you know, last year. So, you know, what's his role going to be? Can he block? But I think that's where you're probably going to see the Eagles miss Dallas most is in the run game. Because he was a good blocker, and I'm not sure they have a blocker that's a backup at tight end that can block. You know, I don't think Calcaterra can. I'm not sure Jackson can.
This would be the Richard Rodgers spot, but he's on the Chargers.
Yeah, I know. I saw that. He caught a pass on Sunday night against the 49ers. I'm like, what? Richard Rodgers? I didn't know he was still playing. But yeah, you're right. This would be the veteran spot. We saw Richard Rodgers come in and make some plays when the injuries happened at tight end a couple of years ago, but he's not there. So now, you know, Calcaterra can catch, he can get open, but can he block? I mean, that to me is the most important thing is who's going to fill that blocking role that Goedert leaves behind.
The much missed Dick Rod, not here with the Eagles.
Can you say that? Can you say that here?
We just did. Here's my final one, Ed, and I thought we were going to be talking about this on Birds 365 this week. And it is completely drifted off the radar because A, the Eagles lost, and B, the Eagles are dealing with injuries. I thought this might be the week that something leaked out of the Eagles free agents. Who is Howie trying to get a deal done with? He's famous for picking people that he thinks are part of the foundation of the team and getting a deal done before they get to free agency. He did as many deals last year, Sweat and Maddox and Goddard and Mailata. This year, there have been none. He hasn't gotten any done. And John and I have discussed leverage has been more on the player side than ownership side because there ain't they keep winning games. Hey, I'm a part of this. You got to pay me. Now they lose. So I thought maybe that would be a conversation this week. They've got bigger fish to fry in dealing with injuries and the like. Well, we're more than halfway through the season, and they haven't gotten any of their many free agents extended and signed to a deal that goes past the end of the season. Is it going to be next week, the week after? Or is it just going to be one of those years where, hey, we're too busy trying to win a Super Bowl to worry about the future? Howie's always been great at keeping an eye on the present and an eye on the future and being able to split his focus. We going to get any news along those lines in the next week or two?
Yeah, I'm surprised we haven't gotten any so far. You mentioned that they've done these deals in the past. I think last November they did Goddard, Maddox. Now they're both hurt, but you can't fault Howie for that, obviously. No. But then they did Jake Elliott last November as well. I listen, the guys that I think are probably the easiest, and John and I have talked about this to do, are guys like Marcus Epps, maybe, a guy who's starting in his first year. Maybe a 3-year, $18 million deal. I mean, seems easy enough. I think he would take it. I think Epps has proven that he can be a starter. He's played every single stinking snap this season so far, and he's been pretty good. So, I think he would be kind of an easy one. I think TJ Edwards could be an easy one as well. He came in as an undrafted kid in 2019, and the Eagles believed in him, and he was able to climb the ranks to become a starter. I think, he could be somebody that they could target as sort of an easy type of a signing. And then I think Isaac Seumalo. I mean, you don't want to lose next year Jason Kelce and Isaac Seumalo. So I don't know why you wouldn't try to look at Seumalo as well. I know he's had an injury history, but, he's a key part of that offensive line, a very underrated part of that offensive line. And, he might be another guy that you can kind of give maybe a 2-year deal to that he would take and stay in Philadelphia, a kid that was drafted here in 2016 with Carson Wentz. So to me, those three make the most sense. I mean, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, be great to sign him, but he's looking at like a $50 million a year deal at this point.
Too much leverage on Chauncey's side.
That's going to be an off-season battle, I think, if they want to re-sign him. And like I said, I think it starts at 15 and might climb to 18 if he keeps playing the way he's playing.
Eagles aren't paying him that. I mean, he's made a lot of plays, but
he's their playmaker on defense. So that's not an easy contract to redo. But I think those three I mentioned, Edwards, Epps, and Seumalo, I mean, those are three I would be trying to get done right now, and then leave the others that might be a little bit more challenging until the off season.
Yeah.
Eddie K, it is always a pleasure whenever we get you on. Be careful sitting around John. I think there's a potential another accident this week waiting to happen in Indianapolis. It's going to be cold there, and McMullen likes his coffee, and it can get a little active.
I call it the incident. Ed had an incident. It's spreading. There was an incident.
It's contagious.
Ed Kracz,
but it wasn't as bad as John. So it really doesn't rise to
but mine was friendly fire. You involved other people. I think yours was worse.
Who'd Kracz spill on?
Nobody.
It was close.
It was near the
nice
food
young
where the
lady
food
who
was
works for the Eagles on game day. Almost took some fire.
Almost just water. It's just water, not coffee. Didn't get any stains on me. The big coffee stain you wore all night with that coffee on the thigh of your blue jeans.
Yeah.
Eddie Kracz.
I'm fighting a losing battle.
Yeah, you're not coming back from that one, Johnny Mac. Eddie K, thanks, bud. We'll talk to you again next week.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Ed.
Ed Kracz here with us on Birds 365. All right, Mac and Mac coming back. Rob Ellis is going to join us in hour number 2. Robbie E, which you know from later in the day here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, will jump aboard here. Also, the host of the Eagles postgame show on their radio network. Looking forward. Haven't had Robbie E on in a couple of months. Mr. Ellis yet to come here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
Since 1977 at Rafferty Subaru, we have always been about our customers and the community. Early on, a safe and durable option, we've evolved to become the best overall brand according to Kelley Blue Book. Over the last 14 years, we've donated thousands of dollars through the Subaru Share the Love event and found homes for hundreds of pets. The Rafferty family is proud of our 45 years in business. This month, celebrate our anniversary with special financing on select models. Visit us and see why.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pond Lehocky, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services. The first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
You got your Mac guys, John McMullen and Jordan McDonald here with you on Birds 365. We're still assessing how the Eagles lost to the Commanders this past week, and is it going to affect any change going forward this week or any other weeks? How should the Eagles handle their first loss of the year? And the fact that they've got a couple of areas where they got no choice whatsoever. They have to shoulder on because they have injuries. Dallas Goedert, minimum of 4 weeks. IR. Marlon Tuipulotu also lands on IR. They bring in Linval Joseph, who hadn't played any games this year, bring him in off his couch, and we'll see if he can do anything for the Eagles this upcoming week. Johnny Mac, should I be worried about the Eagles at wide receiver? Because yesterday, their two star wide receivers ended up on the injured list, on the injury report for practice, which was a walkthrough, not a major practice, but a walkthrough. They didn't list them as rest. They listed them as players with injuries. We saw A.J. Brown get hurt in the first half of that game, toughed it out, played through it. Maybe it affected his play because he had a big drop, and the interception that Hurts threw came off A.J. Brown's hands. Should there be concerns? We're figuring how they're going to replace Dallas Goedert. Well, one of the options is, as Ed Kracz just told us, more Brown, more Smith. They'll just throw to the wide receivers more. Well, the right wide receivers have to be healthy and out there. Is there any reason for concern going into the Colts this week that their wide receivers are not 100% either?
Yeah, I'm concerned about AJ because because I saw him play against Washington, and he wasn't the same after he turned his ankle. He wasn't near what he typically is. So, he's going to play, and everyone's assuming he's going to be himself. But I just saw him. He wasn't himself after he turned it. Now, it's a week later, and obviously he's undergoing treatment, and maybe it's going to be a lot better. And maybe it's nothing to be worried about, but I got to see it first, because the guy who was out there against Washington wasn't the same guy. With Devontae, not as worried. I'm more worried, but my bigger worry about Devontae is they've had trouble mixing him in to not necessarily targets, because he leads the team in receptions after last week, but the impactful plays haven't been there as much this year as his rookie season. I think he's averaging just over 10 yards a catch, which is, should be more than that with Devontae Smith. Maybe that's a silver lining of not having Dallas Goedert. Maybe, he's obviously going to get more involved, more opportunities to make bigger splash plays. So maybe that turns out to be a little bit of a silver lining. But yeah, we got to see how AJ is physically, because he wasn't himself after. And remember, he turned that ankle on the first reception, so it was essentially the whole game, and he didn't have another reception in the entire game, I believe. So he was not himself after that ankle injury.
All right, I'm going to ask you to speculate a little bit for me here with the game coming up with the Colts on Sunday. Now, understand that we can lay it out as best we think it's going to happen here a couple days ahead of time, but then you get in the game and down and distance happens, the scoreboard happens, and that dictates as much as anything else. You said you thought that they came up a little short running the football in this past game against Washington, that the balance wasn't there. It was 26-20 at the end of the game. I think it was pretty damn close to what their average is past the run throughout their 8-0 start. Will Goddard's absence affect their running game? I think they would like to run the ball more and maybe pass it less, because Goddard isn't that receiving option. But I also fear their running game isn't going to be good because there's no Dallas Goedert. Do you think they run it more or pass it more, or do you think it's the same breakout this upcoming week against the Colts? Which
Yeah,
completely unfair question, because we don't know what the score is going to be.
Yeah, to me, I don't really care about the ratio, because, tell me, are they up 2 touchdowns? Are they trying to score? Because it's going to be out of whack. The problem to me was the first half against Washington. That's where I think it was out of whack, and they were. And the frustrating thing was they were running it, as Ed pointed out. When they got the turnover, it was run, bang, 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 touchdown. And then all of a sudden, this pass. That was the issue to me. Then they self-corrected a little bit in the second half and were effective again. But it was too late, and they paid for it. But I'm not as concerned about Jack Stoll can block. No, he's not Dallas Goedert, but he's a good blocker. I'm not as concerned with that. They have the best offensive line. And even though Jordan Mailata is having some troubles because of the shoulder, it's generally in pass protection, not as a run blocker. You can still go straight ahead. I'm not as concerned with the running game. And then you have Jalen Hurts' impact on the running game. Yeah, I'm not concerned at all about that, to be honest, because I think Jack Stoll can handle that part of it. The issue with Dallas is going to be what I mentioned before, sort of the trend busting nature of what you can do. You can do anything you want with Dallas Goedert on the field. You can fool the defense. You can do anything you want. With Jack, it's going to be more, okay, we're going to line up and run the ball, which I think they can do, by the way. I think they can declare, and they've proven that, hey, there's 4 minutes left in the game. We're going to run the ball, drain the clock. They've proven they can do that. I think they can still do that.
Do you think they will?
they like to throw the ball, Joe.
Yeah, they do. That's why I'm asking the question. If we had asked this question in 2021, the answer would have been, oh, yeah, that's exactly what they're going to do because they're a running football team. They went out and got A.J. Brown. Now, sans Dallas Goedert, do we see a reverting to the way they won last year? Do they try and just find
I think the only way they revert to what they were last year is if A.J. really is affected. Then they might say, we don't have the ability to do what we want to do, kind of revert back to last year. If AJ's healthy, if AJ's ready to go, if AJ's AJ, no, they're going to throw the ball. They like to throw the ball. They want to throw the ball. And it might make them more susceptible to throw the ball because, Calcaterra's obviously a receiver, not a blocker. Tyree's a receiver, not a blocker. So they might even be more apt. And you're going to have, as I said, you're going to have more Quez Watkins as well, more 11 personnel, more Zach Pascal, which again points to more throwing the football.
In yesterday's press gathering, you guys did a good job trying to get Sirianni to talk about going back to Indianapolis from whence he came and going up against the Colts. Now, it's not what we thought it was going to be when we saw the schedule. It was going to be a showdown between Sirianni and Frank Reich. Not the case with Frank having been given his walking papers last week. It's Jeff Saturday against Nick Sirianni, which doesn't have as much overlap and narrative tied to it. But Sirianni was pretty straight-faced when he said, listen, this is about this week's game. Yeah, I was there. It'd be nice to walk into the building, but no, I'm focused on the Eagles getting back on a winning track after losing this past game. Easier said than done? Was he being honest with you guys, or was he saying what he needed to say?
He was saying what he needed to say. He says that about players as well. This is a bigger narrative because he's pissed that Frank Reich got fired. He loves Frank Reich. And that's not Nick Sirianni, but he loves Frank Reich, and he is angry and disappointed, and he thinks it's unfair. I think it's a bigger narrative than if he were going back and Frank was the coach, because they love each other. It's all Hosannas there at that point. They're all like, I love it. He is pissed off at Jim Irsay, and he wants to stick it to Jim Irsay. That is my opinion.
All right, fair enough. So here's my question for you, and I'm sure that you and other guys on the beat have attempted, and he's seeing it on his phone. Frank Reich seeing John McMullen's name come up, or Zach Berman's name come up. Right? There's no way he's pushing receive. He's not going to be talking to any of the media this week. Just a guess. If one of you guys get him, God damn it, I'll give you a lot of credit for it. But I think Frank's going to play very low profile this week. But he's taking Nick Sirianni's calls. When Sirianni calls, he's hitting talk. Is it just he empties the bucket on any scouting report that Nick can get his hands on this week, that there's, as you say, some pretty bad Irsay blood flowing under those fingers right now?
Yeah. Frank Reich is a part of the Eagles, officially or unofficially. It's unofficial, obviously. Yeah, he's helping the Eagles this week. And that's where things have changed. Obviously, wouldn't have been the case if he, and it was, completely unfair what Irsay did, especially when you see what happened. And Jeff Saturday was allowed to go back to Matt Ryan. I mean, that's a clown show right there. Forcing, he fired, but people forget because of what went on. He fired the offensive coordinator, Marcus Brady, before he fired Reich.
Right.
Then he fired Reich, and he's like, you got to play Sam Ehlinger. We got to think about the future, tanking, whatever. And now all of a sudden this buddy comes in who he likes. And I don't have a problem with that part. You and I have talked about it. Hey, hire who you want to hire. But, then allowing him to say, all right, the obvious answer, who gives you the best chance to win? We always say that. That's an obvious freaking answer in Indianapolis. And Frank wasn't allowed to say it. And he is. That's a clown show, Jody.
I would tend to agree. The Colts are there right now. One more right question before we punch up Rob Ellis. We know that he has this very good ongoing relationship with Nick Sirianni, and Nick has done a nice job deflecting questions about Frank Reich being immediately added to the Eagles. Why don't we hire him this week? Bring him in as a consultant. They can get anything they want from Reich just by placing a phone call. They don't have to make it official and put him on the payroll. You just said it. He's an Eagle as of right now, and he certainly is this week. But how difficult is that for Reich? Because we know his relationship with Sirianni, but there's still a whole bunch of guys in that locker room he's pretty tight with. That's still a large part his coaching staff. All right, they fired the offense coordinator, but all the other coaches, he was part of bringing them in. Maybe some of them his specific designations. There's a whole bunch of players that are on this team that have been there for a couple of years that you've got to have some kind of loyalty to. How split is Frank Reich this week?
He's probably split. You're probably right. I mean, we probably curse more on this show than Frank Reich has in his life. I mean, he is a good guy. He is a straight shooter. So, you know, he'll probably do it in a professional manner. But if Nick asks him questions, he's going to answer the questions. I don't think he's going to go try to throw anybody under a bus, but at the end of the day, it's football. I mean, Jim Irsay could have assured that he wasn't giving intel to the Eagles by keeping him on staff. He has no loyalty to that organization any longer, nor should he. And from the players' perspective, a lot of that stuff is overrated anyway. It's not like Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen and the coaching staff can't just watch the film and know what Indy's doing anyway. But if he has a specific question about, what they're comfortable with in a certain situation, and remember, that may have changed because you have a wild card. Not only do you have a wild card in Jeff Saturday, you have a wild card in a first-time play caller. It could have all changed anyway. It might even not be that big of an impact. But he knows about the players, and he knows what they're comfortable doing.
Yeah, I think this is a plus for the Eagles this week. I think Frank Reich will be very forthcoming with anything that Nick Sirianni wants to ask him. And yeah, the bottom line is the players are going to have to go out and compete and make plays, and it'll come down to being able to physically play the game. A little extra added intel, never a bad thing, and I think the Eagles get a little bit more than they would have if Frank. I guarantee you they got more than they would have if Frank Reich was still the head coach of the Colts. All right, Jody McDonald and John McMullen hanging with you on Birds 365. I always love talking to my buddy Rob Ellis. He's coming up next. You hear him later in the day right here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel on Sports Take. He does Eagles post game on the Eagles Radio Network, WIP here in Philadelphia, and all their other outlets. We haven't had Rob on since the summer, as a matter of fact. So it'll be good to catch up with Rob Ellis next here on Birds 365.
Don't wait until after Thanksgiving for leftovers. It's the new leftover sales event at Jeff D'Ambrosio Destination Downingtown. Jeff must get rid of hundreds of new 2022 vehicles on the lot. Rams, Grand Cherokees, Wranglers. Jeff has them all for less. Jeff has reduced prices and payments to the lowest they've been all year. And Jeff knocks down high interest rates. Save thousands, more than anywhere else. Plus, get more for any trade or lease return. You always win at Jeff's. Great selection, best price. Hurry in now. Jeff D'Ambrosio Destination Downingtown. Nobody treats you better. Black Friday sales event.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
At Salus University, our graduates are among the most highly trained in their profession because of our unique emphasis on research, interprofessional collaboration, and early clinical exposure. Learn more about our programs at salus.edu.
Here's a Thursday edition of Birds 365 here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. And methinks I recognize that hat that our next guest is wearing from Sports Take later on in the day here on JAKIB Media's YouTube channel, and the host of the Eagles postgame show on the radio network WIP here in Philly, Mr. Rob Ellis. Where do you get that hat?
Hi, boys. You know what? When Xander and Joe Krause weren't looking, I kind of grabbed it. Yeah, it's tough.
Xander's promised me a JAKIB hat for like 3 months now, so I'm still waiting.
I know. I'm telling you, John. You have to take matters into your own hands, man. That's all I can tell you.
I got to show up. But I'm not in town when they're doing the post, so
it's a good point.
It's difficult for me to steal it, but I'll get it done.
When we're done, I'll just text you their address. You can just go.
I was going to say, did you hotwire Krause's trunk? Because otherwise, you're not getting your hands on it if you don't.
I can't give you all the details, Jody.
Okay,
all right?
On the air, I get it. You're going to have to text me. That's fine. Text me. I'm not going to accept the text. You're going to have to tell me live here on the show. Linval Joseph, how many snaps this week, if any?
Boy, he wasn't the picture of fitness to begin with. So I would guess after a year layoff at 34, how's 8 sound?
8. I like it. You didn't get the double digits.
I need more. Right. I need more than 8.
12? 12-ish? I don't know.
You know, Fletcher played so many snaps last week, and he himself said he feels pretty shitty. We could say that here. They played too many snaps as a defense as a whole. They need to get some reps somewhere, and they need to stop the run, I'm told. That's why he's here. They got Robert Quinn on the field quickly. They got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson on the field quickly. He knows how to play.
Yeah.
I need more than 8, Rob.
Well, I guess if they have if the defense is on the field for about 59.5 minutes, he'll probably get more than 8 snaps, I would guess. If it's like last week, maybe you multiply that by like 5, considering the way it went with time of possession. But you're right. 8's probably a little low. I think we do reach, Jody, the double digits here. If that was with the over-under that you said.
Yeah.
We'll see if that's the case. How big an issue is the fact that the last 3 opponents have run the ball as effectively as they have against the Eagles? Are you one of those who say, hey, but look at it overall, they're 8-1, and the defense is still, if you're looking at total yards, they're a top 5 defense in the league. But if you look at against the run, they're a bottom 12 team in the league. How big an issue is this for the Eagles going into Indianapolis this week against Jonathan Taylor, last year's rushing champion?
I think what kind of distinguished the Monday night game versus Washington was, a lot of these games, the Eagles have been up in the fourth quarter and teams will abandon it and they have to throw it a little bit more. Washington didn't have to do that. They had the lead. It was a relatively tight game, but they could just keep going about their game plan. So, I think you're sticking your head in the sand a little bit if you don't think it's somewhat of an issue. It sure is. I mean, not every team's perfect. Every team's got one of these Achilles heels. It's just starting to become a little bit more glaring here. And especially when you look at the lineup of the running backs they're going to be facing. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any way you're not concerned about it. I was worried before in that they were giving up big chunks per carry. And I also understand, too, Jonathan Gannon's defense is all about not giving up the home runs. He's going to give you singles and doubles here and there, which means teams are going to get 6 yards per carry.
Yeah.
The difference, I think, last week on Monday, God, it's what is today? Thursday? I don't know.
Yeah.
It all kind of runs together. But the difference with Monday, I think they were in a lot of third and manageables where teams maybe haven't been as much this year. So yeah, I mean, you're facing a team in Jonathan Taylor where they're not going to ask Matt Ryan to probably do a ton. They're going to go with the same blueprint they went with last week that got him a win. Mind you, it's over a garbage Raiders team, but they're going to go with that same blueprint. So you're going to have to show that you can stop it early.
Yeah. You mentioned the gash in Houston on the Thursday night game. They got gashed by Dameon Pierce. They gave up 3.1 yards per carry against Washington, Rob, and their longest run, Washington's longest run, was 11 yards. Is the offense? Did we give the offense a pass in this game? Because they're not getting any of the criticism, and they were a big part of that loss.
Well, you guys both know what this is. Everybody's waiting to pounce on Gannon. They're just waiting, and that was the perfect opportunity, the perfect opening there. I think you saw some really horrific drives, like the first drive of the second half. What was that? The last drive of the first half. What was that? I mean, that was 2 consecutive drives by the offense where I thought it was awful. I thought the execution was terrible. I didn't like the play calling that went along with it. The offense is absolutely getting a pass. How does Miles Sanders get 1 touch in the first half? I know you hardly have the ball, but part of that is stay on the field a little bit more and you'll have the ball a little bit more. It does cut both ways. It's definitely more on the defense with the way that they played on Monday night, but the offense absolutely owns this. I mean, football's the ultimate team game. It really is.
Here's why I'm not as upset with if you're just analyzing the game plan, the play calling from play to play, offense to defense. The 2 biggest reasons the Eagles lost on Monday on the offensive side were fumbles.
Yeah.
It's the Goddard fumble. It's the Quez Watkins fumble. They didn't coach him to fumble. That isn't part of their working week to work. Scramble again and try and recover the fumble. No,
but they coach him not to fumble, Jody. And there's no luck involved. There's no luck involved.
That's true. There's no luck involved. Very, very good, J-Mac. And by the way, I think I mentioned this on Tuesday. Good hustle by Devonta Smith. He almost got that Quez Watkins fumble.
He did.
He was about 20 yards downfield, and he went flying and diving in, and he almost came up with it, which would have been used. Changed the whole direction of our conversation this week. No, that's why I got a bigger problem, because the defense is the defense, and what Gannon puts together and the scheme that he has in and the guys he has on the field dictates things. There wasn't a tipped ball or a bounce that went against the defense. No, it was earned by the Redskins, whereas offense, you had something that the Eagles just hadn't done in 9 games, which is put the ball on the ground. They had not done it all year.
Yeah, you just hit it, Jody. That's why I think that game was kind of an anomaly. Look, they got outplayed. There's no excuses. I'm not making any excuses, but they generally don't turn it over the way that they did in that game. You had some bad breaks along the way, which it happens. You're going to have to overcome that kind of stuff if you're a really good football team, but they did get some bad breaks. There's no denying it. So I think there was a lot of things that went into it. And I think John and Jody, you look at when you win, like the Houston game, for example, I know a lot of people weren't focused on it because the Phillies were playing. When you win and you're giving up a ton on the ground, it's kind of like, all right, but we survived it. And not that I think this team got lackadaisical or was smelling themselves, but I do think that when you lose, it drives the message home a little bit more. And maybe there's a little bit more of an emphasis, or at least a lock-in or a buy-in from certain players that we need to do things a little bit differently. We can't just get away with it all the time. It's going to bite us at some point. So if it serves as anything, I think that could be a positive. Losing this game serves as that kind of a wake-up call, a little bit, coaches and players, because that was a game that was there to be taken for sure. Washington is nothing special. And Taylor Heineke is he might be an upgrade from Wentz, but he's nothing special either.
Yeah,
that's fair.
So let's talk about, change. You get to talk to callers on WIP. You see the stream on your show. I'm kind of stunned how quickly, Rob, people have gone from I don't see a loss on the schedule to I don't see a win on the schedule. I mean, they're still 8-1. They still got a top 5 offense, a top 5 defense. Why is everyone change this? Is it we've been talking about this lull? It was coming. I didn't know where, It's the nature of this league. Kansas City loses, Buffalo loses, everybody loses. These games happen. Why does everyone want immediate change? And by the way, the Eagles gave them immediate change. They lose one game and they go out and sign a 34-year-old nose tackle. That seems like a little panic to me, to be honest.
John, I think it's two things. I think it's the nature of the beast with the NFL and the Eagles, right? It's once a week. There's only 17 of them. You lose your mind over anything, just like you're going to go 17-0. You go to that extreme to the other extreme that, oh my God, this team's in trouble. So I think there's a pendulum swing that is really either side. I think the other part is it's just the way things are in 2022. I think some of it is social media. I think there's just more of a voice and people are there to react a little bit more and think about it a little bit more. And we're presented with so many more either opinions, stats, everything that goes along with it. I think feeds into sort of an extremist either way. Like you go heavy one way or the other. And let's face it. I mean, I think in a weird way, I don't want to say like an awakening, like all of a sudden people are paying attention to the Eagles, but now with the Phillies gone, I think there's more focus. You had that quirky scheduling where they played twice in 29 days and 11 days off.
Yeah.
And I think you finally got a game and people were frothing at the mouth and it was kind of a dud, let's face it. And I think that brings out that kind of reaction as well.
All right. So Rob, they lose a game and you knew it was coming. Some people singing the narrative, some of their players too, included, that a loss could be a good thing. It gets the monkey off their back of the undefeated season conversation. They don't have to worry about it. It's now in their rearview mirror. I think that's often overstated, if irrelevant at all. And if you're going to give it any relevancy, you have to turn around and win this week. Okay, you're right. You were less pressurized this week, and you could just do what you got to do, and you went out and won a game on the road as a favorite, touchdown favorite, mind you, but on the road. Does that actually add pressure this week to the fact that they now have to go out and win this Colts game?
Jody, at first, let me look at the other way. I think it's a weird emotional game for the Colts too, because last week was nobody believes in Jeff Saturday. All they've done is killed us for this move, and they go out and win on the road, right? So can you keep that same emotional pitch if you're not a super talented team like I don't think the Colts are this week? I do wonder about that a little bit at the angle that they come at it. But to answer your question, I was not one who said you have to lose. They can't handle this pressure of being 17-0 and all that. I didn't buy that. But I did find it interesting after the game that it was one of the – and John, you could speak to this. I'm sure you were right there when he had his Lakers hat on and he was talking to the media. A.J. Brown did bring it up almost right away. Now, I don't know if that was just sort of like, hey, we got it over with, and or it was really starting to weigh on these guys. So, Jody, you do. To answer your question, if you're going to put it out there, you do have to go and win this game and basically say, all right, well, that's off our back. We're the better team. We're 6.5-point favorites. They don't care about that. We do, but they go out there and they have to take care of it. I mean, look, the other thing you have to show is at some point, you're not going to get shredded on the ground. I know it's Jonathan Taylor, but you got to at least contain him. You go from there. Your offense should be able to flourish. I know there are guys that are banged up a little bit and, AJ, Devontae, Kelsey feeling it a little bit, but they've been really healthy all year. This is the first time they've been struck with this. I mean, and they would in much better shape than virtually any other team in the NFL in terms of games lost. So figure out a way to overcome it if you're really this good a team. So, I do think they need to go out there and really play a clean game this week and get back to who they are. Run the ball, play off of that a little bit, and just, defensively contain the run and then force turnovers. I know Matt Ryan has been a really good to great player in this league, but he's not that same guy anymore. So if you could take the running game away, he has limited weapons. You should be able to create some turnovers and get to him.
Well, you talk about those injuries, Rob, and the biggest one this week being Dallas Goedert. Now we know he's going to be gone for 4 games. Did we overrate the depth of this team, or is it the coaching staff? Now, we haven't seen it with Dallas, but we've seen it with Jordan Davis, who, is a role player, very good role player, but he's a role player. He only played 25, 30 snaps a game, and they've had a very, very difficult time replacing him to the point that they're signing a 34-year-old nose tackle off the street. Devontae Smith and AJ Brown. AJ gets banged up a little bit. He still played, but they had a really difficult time. He wasn't himself. Is that coaching more, not being able to adjust when he can't replace these players? You go back to the Super Bowl season, people kind of forget Jason Peters wasn't there. They know Carson Wentz wasn't there. Halapuli Bati was the starting left tackle on the Super Bowl team. Jordan Hicks was gone. He was the leader of the defense. Nigel Bradham stepped in as the green dot, so to speak. They overcame a lot of injuries to go to that Super Bowl. Significant injuries, more significant than this team. But this team, it's early, but they've had trouble replacing players that aren't there.
Yeah, John, it's a fair point. Look, I think we've gone so far overboard with it, and I really like Jordan Davis, and I think he's going to be a stud. But we're acting like he's Jerome Brown and Warren Sapp rolled into one. I mean, you lose him, and oh my God, you can't stop anybody. The three of us could run for $150 on them. Like somebody's got to step up here, first of all. So, but the other thing we're going to find out about is Jonathan Gannon. Look, I've been a staunch supporter of him to the point where I get killed for it, but. This is where we're going to find out if you can really coach. Yeah, you've lost some pieces here, and something's been exposed here. And, with a blueprint and all that other stuff we could talk about. Let's find out what you're made of now with adapting and overcoming, what's happening here. I think in terms of the depth thing, yeah, I think they're a little bit thin, John. I think there was a real mistake made special teams-wise with players. Like, you have a couple guys who were special teamers in Sean Bradley and maybe a few others, but for the most part, you're going like square peg, round hole kind of guys with the Kobe Dean. And I think that was a bit of a mistake personnel-wise by Howie. He's hit on a lot of other things, but yeah, they may lack depth a little bit. Let's face it, it's a pretty decent fall off from Goddard to Stoll, or if you're asking a rookie like Calcaterra to step up. That's a big leap here. Now you're asking Linval Joseph to step in there off the street, having sat for a while. Mind you, has been a really good NFL player, but yeah, you are lacking a little bit of depth. Let's face it. The other thing is, and I know I'm all over the place, but your edge rushers need to start being better. I know Sweat has the big strip sack, but where's BG? Where are the rest of these guys? They need to be better than they have been getting to the quarterback.
Yeah, Reddick didn't do anything on Monday night against the Commanders either. All three of us have been more supporters of the defensive coordinator than haters on a defensive coordinator. I might be the third of the three if you're as big as you say you are, Rob, but I know John is. Is it not fair to call Jonathan Gannon stubborn? That he's got his system and I'm not changing until I get beaten over the head and I'm directly dictated to by the head coach, which, oh, by the way, on Monday night, the coach did say, we need to make changes quicker. We need to react and do some adjusting on the fly. He did say that, and I thought that was directly pointed at Gannon. Is that a fair criticism of Gannon, that he is a little bit overly stubborn with his way of getting things done?
I think it's fair. I mean, last year, he didn't have the personnel, and you had to do what you had to do to survive, just like the offense had to do what they had to do in terms of running the ball. So I understand it more last year. He's got better players this year, which I think should allow him a little more leeway or wiggle room to maybe get out of his comfort zone and force it a little bit more, whether it's a run blitz, whether it's a pass blitz, whether it's just changing up something, stunning a little bit more, whatever. So yeah, I do think there's a stubbornness. I think there's a faith and a belief in the system. And let's face it, if we're looking at it from his standpoint, up until last week, I think they were averaging 16.9 points per game allowed, which I think was fourth in the NFL up until that point. Your hallmark, like your jumping off point is always 17 points for any good defensive coordinator will tell you that. They were just a hair under that. So for me, as much as it was frustrating sometimes with some of the softer things, the coverage and the not giving up a big play, that could be frustrating for a fan. I get that. Let's face it, it had worked. Now, it didn't work last week, and you need to change off of that. This is where I think it needs to be a little bit of an awakening, and I think this is where Sirianni, too, needs to lean into him a little bit and say, Jonathan, listen, man, it's been awesome so far, but, we're seeing some bad trends here, and against some of these better running backs, maybe we need to change it up here. The head coach needs to kind of get on him a little bit and do things a little bit differently, Jody. So I do think he is a little stubborn. Yeah.
And Nick's a CEO coach, so and he takes pride in having his thumbs in all pies. I will say this from talking to coaches for so many years, and not just Jonathan Gannon, but coaches all the time tell me, look, you practice to play a certain way. And if you throw all that out and start doing something wildly different, what sense does that make? It's always, I think I get the frustration of fans, but it does make sense. If you practice something all week and all year and all spring and all summer, and then say, you know what, guys, we're going to throw this in the trash. That's kind of a panic move, isn't it?
Yeah, that's why I think it's amendments, not rip it up and throw it in the garbage. I think I think it's tweaks. I think the other thing is he knows also the flaws and the people who can be exposed if he does some of the things that maybe the fan base wants and what that could potentially turn into. Yeah. So I think there's definitely some of that as well. Just knowing his personnel. Certainly better than anybody else knows. So I think there's some of that. But yeah, John, I don't think it's all of a sudden, hey, listen, I know what we've been doing all year. Forget that. We're doing this. I don't think you do that. But I do think look, I mean, they know what happened. They know what's been happening. They know what they've kind of gotten away with. So, at some point you can't just do the definition of insanity thing and hope it changes.
I'll run these numbers by you. I did this early in the show, but you weren't on, Rob. 83 snaps for the Commanders on Monday. They had 2 tight ends on the field for 40 of those 83 snaps.
It's coming. Yes.
I'm guessing they're going to run the football. I'm not going out on a limb by saying I think they're going to run the football the majority time off that particular formation. You can't get an extra tackler on the field. You can't get an extra linebacker on the field and get Josiah Scott off the field when the other team is basically raising their hand and saying, we're going to run the football this time.
Yeah,
that's not changing your defensive philosophy. That's, as you called it correctly, so tinkering.
Yeah,
he's got to be able to tinker. He's got to be able to do certain things, not massive changes, not get him on the field an extra linebacker change from the defense they play to a standard NFL 4-3 defense. No, it's on given plays depending on, and I don't know Gannon well enough. John knows him better than me, but I know NFL football coaches. They all want to dictate terms. They want to put their position in place and make the other team change for them. Well, sometimes when the other team's getting better, you can't just continue to say, well, screw it, we're doing it my way. I'm not changing. I'm not going to make any adjustments. No, you got to, when the other team's running it effectively against you, react to that and make it and tinker rather than make a change.
I think that's fair. Look, I think that's fair. It's one of the biggest beefs I have with Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers has sometimes a decent game plan going into games. In game, he's terrible. He has no feel for when to call a timeout. Never tinkers. It's basically like, this is what I drew up and we're going with it. And if I'm going to kill Doc Rivers, which I do all the time, I need to get on Jonathan Gannon for not making an adjustment.
Well, yeah, but is this the week, I guess? Like, I don't know why this is the
Jonathan
week. Like
Taylor? Yeah, I would say this is the week.
No. I'm saying the Washington game. Like, why is this coming up in the Washington game? Like, what are you going to – is
John,
3-1?
It's not the Washington game. Pittsburgh, who Najee Harris is having a lousy year, went for $144. Damon Pierce, a rookie, toted it for 150, and the Texans went for 160, and the Commanders went for 150. It's not one game; it's 3 games running that they've had the ball run down their throats.
But what's the difference between the first 2 and the last one? Is they lost the game, and actually they were most successful stopping the run in the last one, the game they lost, because as Rob pointed out, this is the ultimate team game. And by the other side that keeps getting a pass for some stinking reason didn't hold up their end, because if they didn't fumble, and as Jason Kelsey said, it wasn't a face mask because they didn't call the damn thing, so it's not a face mask. But they got some bad luck, which Nick Sirianni doesn't adhere to, but they've got some bad luck. But the offense didn't hold up their end. If the offense just holds up their ends, we're not having this conversation, because they're 9-0. My only point is, I don't get why the panic strikes in this game, which was such an outlier. There's no doubt about it. Jonathan Gannon has made the cost-benefit analysis. He always says, no matter what defense you call, there's going to be tough duty. And he wants to play with light boxes. And the tough duty is stopping the run because he wants to prevent explosive plays. That has been successful 8 out of 9 times. I just don't get the panic. Is 3.1 going to become 2.9? Is 11 yards going to become 9 yards as the longest run? Like, why this game? It's mind-boggling.
I think, John, the other thing is, fans are looking at bigger picture too. Like, they're certainly reacting to that game. I'm not saying that, but I think they're also looking at it like, wow, this team really has a chance to win a Super Bowl or get to a Super Bowl or get out of the NFC, however you want to look at it. I think they're also viewing it that way, and they may feel like, once you get to the playoffs or once you play the Cowboys again or whomever, however you want to, use your measuring stick, are they good enough? It's not just getting past Washington on a Monday night. It's not just getting past Houston on a Thursday night. It's bigger picture. Are you able?
But is it the bigger picture, Rob? The bigger picture is Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, maybe Joe Burrow, maybe Tua. That's the bigger picture. Those are the teams. If you get to where you want to get, you got to worry about them.
You do, John, but you got to worry about the Niners, who can throw a couple good running backs at you, and other teams
you're going to be NFC meeting before you get to the
NFC. Who are you going to be meeting in the NFC just to get to the big dance? I think there's some of that that accompanies this. Like, and here's the other thing: things have been so good that you're gonna nitpick and just hammer anything that looks even remotely bad. We know that. Like, how weird was last week? I don't know about you guys. Like, just trying to get creative for the show leading into the Monday game. I was out of stuff, man. Honestly, like, I'm like, what the hell am I talking about today?
3 games in 29 days.
Right. Yeah. But I think some of that breeds, just going overboard on certain things. And then, John, we got it, it served up on a platter on Monday night. So therefore you're going to go crazy about it.
Well, and if you revert back to the Thursday game, Dameon Pierce ran it down their throats.
Oh yeah.
Now, if you want to add the deodorant of, but the Eagles won, okay, fine. Well, when you don't have that deodorant anymore and they lost the game, guess what? People are going to go back to, and the Steelers ran it against them. Yeah, and the Texans ran it against them. And now the Commanders are running against them in 3 weeks running.
I guess my point is that's baked in. They're playing with light boxes. They know they're going to give up run. They know they're going to give up some rushing yards. They've made that cost-benefit analysis and said, I'll give up this to take this away. Now, if you want to argue with the theme, I think that's a valid argument. If you want to say that's not the way to do it, but they understand that they said, look, that's why they went out and got Linval. They said, look, we want to play light boxes. If we don't have Jordan Davis, we got to find somebody where we can play light boxes. Now, if you want to argue with that theme, I'm all with you. I say, all right, that's a legitimate argument. But they know, they've decided it's okay to get gashed in a run.
I think, John, that theme is contingent upon your offense doing their job. And there may be nights where they didn't, right? And they certainly didn't Monday. But the problem is, can you win a game that way? We don't see any games like this anymore, but 10-7 or 13-10. I don't know. If the other team just plays that keep away thing and you can't get your offense on the field, or when they get on the field, they're failing. I don't know if you can survive that. It's not.
The thematic argument is the better one to me.
My stance is I'm good with light boxes most of the time. If that's your base and that's what you believe in most, good on you, Jonathan Gannon. But you have to be able to have offshoots. You've got to be able to tinker, to use Rob Ellis's word. And I'm seeing no evidence that's the case. That when Gannon throws his defense out there, this is my defense, that we've already signed off on it. We know we're going to be giving up certain stuff, but we're going to benefit in other areas, and we're going to go through it hell or high water. I'd like to see some flexibility. The best teams, Super Bowl contending teams, have flexibilities and plan Bs. And that's what bothers me about the Eagles defense the last couple of weeks is there's no plan B. I'm good with sticking with plan A, but you got to sprinkle in plan B every once in a while. And they don't seem to be willing to do that.
Yeah, it's fair. Look, it's a fair criticism. And so, John, in your estimation this week, do we see sort of the same thing? I know Joseph might be working.
Same defense.
We're not seeing any. Yeah. Okay, no extremes.
They want to stop explosive plays. And here's the thing: this coaching staff has said consistently, Rob, if you win the turnover battle and you win the explosive play battle, you're going to win the game. They were 8-0 doing it. They're 0-1 not doing it. They lost one with the turnover battle. So if they win the turnover battle, they limited the explosive plays, they would have won that game. That's why I don't understand why the offense is getting the pass. Now, look, the defense was on the – there's no – as I said, there is no reason they can't get off the field on third downs. I think the bigger issue was third down defense. And a lot of that has to do with first and second down because they were in manageable situations. But when in the second half, when they did get the 3rd and 7 or 3rd and 8s or more, they got off the field. There were 9 of 12 to start on third downs, Washington, which was terrible. And then it got better as the game went on. So I do think they improved a little bit. The offense didn't hold up their end of the bargain. And it was, by the way, that was an outlier. You know, they don't turn the ball over typically. They're very good about that. But that's the reason they lost the game. And that's the part I guess I can't get my head around is the offense getting the pass.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, I think there are a few people like Darius Slay's getting a pass. You know, there are people.
Well, I brought up, and Slay had his worst game of the year.
Yeah. So I think people you're generally accustomed, like how often is A.J. Brown going to go 1 for 7? You know, how Devontae very quiet for the most. I know he had a touchdown, but pretty quiet night in general. Goddard was quiet up until, you know, getting hurt. Again, some of that is they weren't on the field. I understand that. But you had a lot of outlier kind of performances, which I don't think you're going to get again. And I think as long as it's not the extreme of third down conversions and the extreme of the amount of yards that they're chewing up, Eagles will be fine. They're the better team most weeks.
All right. Last question for you. And I don't know if D-Gun, if you brought this up on your show here later in the day on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, Sports Take, D-Gun got a relationship with Frank Reich?
Yes. Yes.
Do you think he can find out over the weekend how Frank Reich watches the game, where he watches it? Does he actually pump his fist when the Eagles score, when the Colts score? Think D-Gun can find that out for us?
I will, as soon as we're done, there will be a text. Mr. Gunn. That will happen, Jody. I promise you that. I'll keep you posted.
It will be very interesting if we can get that piece of information. Robbie, great stuff. Always appreciate it when you hop on board. Thanks, brother. We will get you back on down the road.
All right.
Thanks,
sounds
Rob.
good. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
You don't have to go too far. Keep it right here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel to get more Rob Ellis this afternoon with his buddy Derek Gunn and our pal Big Barrett Brooks. Hey, I'd love to be a fly on the wall wherever Frank Reich is watching this game on Sunday, because I'd love to know how his loyalties and allegiances are split for the game. McMullen, are you going to Indianapolis, by the way?
Yes. That is the plan.
So you're leaving when?
Don't know yet, but that is the plan.
Okay. All right, but tomorrow you're here for hour number 1, but not for hour number 2. Is that right?
That is correct. Big Barrett's going to be in for hour number 2.
Gotcha. So
got to get down for Nick Sirianni. Get some juicy off the record stuff.
You're getting some stuff out of the coach Manana, and then taking off for Indianapolis. We're going to come back, and before we take off, we're going to put a bow on the show here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
Since 1977 at Rafferty Subaru, we have always been about our customers and the community. Early on, a safe and durable option, we've evolved to become the best overall brand according to Kelley Blue Book. Over the last 14 years, we've donated thousands of dollars through the Subaru Share the Love event and found homes for hundreds of pets. The Rafferty family is proud of our 45 years in business. This month, celebrate our anniversary with special financing on select models. Visit us and see why.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing, the second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs, and then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
You got your Mac guys here on Birch 365 for the Low on the show. All right, so you're heading in today to is today coordinator Tuesday on Thursday? Is that
happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday?
Yeah.
You think it'll be a happy Thursday, or is Jonathan Gannon hearing guys like Jody McDonald question his
he hears it because you got there's more people closer to Jody McDonald than John McMullen on Jonathan Gannon days, if you know what I mean.
Probably. And again, I just want to be on the record. I'm a Gannon fan. I think he's a good defensive coordinator. I think the Eagles could be in a much worse place with their defensive coordinator.
Oh, yeah.
I think Gannon's one of the better defensive coordinators in the National Football League. Not the best, that's for damn sure, but he's one of the better ones. I'm not sure he's as hotly should be as hotly looked at around the league as he is, that he got the interviews last year as head coach. But yeah, I'm going to question him. If he has a bad week, I'm going to question him. He doesn't get a pass for me because I think he's been good for a year and a half.
I question him all the time. I do know his philosophy though, and I know why he does things. And he knows he's given up some rushing yardage. Like that's part of the deal. That's part of the philosophy. And remember, the philosophy, one of my biggest criticisms of Jonathan Gannon, to be honest, is the philosophy is not his. It comes from somebody else. So it's a copycat situation. But, there's 12 teams last time I checked that run this scheme, and they all have done the same cost benefit analysis. And that's part of it. Part of it is light boxes. Part of it is giving up some things in the running game that fans aren't going to be happy with on particular game days because it doesn't look great. But that, trust me, that is baked into the theme and the philosophy.
I'm okay with having a theme and a philosophy and borrowing it from somewhere else. If you believe in it, you believe in it. That's I don't care if somebody else created it first. If you could make it work, good on you, Jonathan Gannon. I just want to see a little flexibility. I don't want it to be like stone tablets coming down from the mount. We shall not do it any other way.
The tablet has come down from the mount, Jody. Bam. That's the complaint. That's the complaint.
That's a good way to lose football games, and they found a way to lose a football game.
They win a lot
this week against Washington. Yeah, they have. More so for the offense than the defense, at least my opinion. If you put them both on the scales, yeah, the offense has been more than expected in their preseason expectations.
Number 3 versus number 3.
Overall, you're talking?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see if they can stay at number 3 after this week against Jonathan Taylor. I think it's going to be heavy lifting for the defense. All right, partner. Let's do this thing again tomorrow. You're going to be here the first hour, Barrett Brooks the second hour, but that means you and I back tomorrow, some 22 hours from now.
Let's do it.
Jody Mack here in 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate, inside the locker room, and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.